crossing the river by feeling the stones. I'm going to talk a lot about mapping. I'm also going to talk a lot about strategy. So this is where we're going to go. We're going to start off with strategy, then I'm going to talk about situational awareness, why this subject matters. Bit of a wandering journey there. Then we're going to zoom over and talk about maps and the importance of maps for business. And then I'm sort of going to meander through, and we're going to meet some elves along the way. We're going to talk about how to exploit a landscape until finally we sort of avoid some corporate bugbears. We get into the world of open source. So that's where we're going to go today. I'm going to start with strategy. I'm going to start with a personal story. When I was CEO of a Canon subsidiary, this is a company called Tango. We used to do about 16 different lines of business. One of them was an online photo service, several million users. We're very profitable, revenue growing, everything was perfect, except for one thing, and that one thing was me. I was the CEO, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I mean, we were making loads of money and everything else, but I wasn't the sort of chess-playing master. I was more the alchemist, gut feel, making it up as I went along. I was desperately worried that other people were going to find out that I was this fake CEO. I very much was sort of like hoping no one would notice. So I used to go around listening to other CEOs talking about strategy, and I used to record what they would say, the small words. I would call these, well, first of all, before getting there, this is the sort of thing that we had. Our vision statements, our strategy is customer focus. We will lead a disruptive effort of the market through our use of that sort of thing. But I'd actually nicked this from other people. So anyway, I used to go around recording these CEOs talking about strategy and record business level abstractions of a healthy strategy, or short words, BLAs for short. And I do this every couple of years. 2014 was the last time. These are the common BLAs that people use. Digital business, big data, disruptive, innovative, collaborative, competitive advantage, ecosystem. And then what I would do is I'd grab these people's strategy documents and combine them together, and I would generate a BLA template. So our strategy is BLA. We will lead a BLA effort of the market through our use of BLA and BLA to build a BLA. And then I would ram the BLAs and the BLA templates together and sort of auto-generate 64 different random strategies. I thought I'd go through them. This is all random gibberish. Strategy 1. Our strategy is customer focus. We will lead a disruptive effort of the market through our use of innovative social media and big data to build a collaborative, cloud-based ecosystem. Oh, it's awful. Strategy 2, our strategy is innovative digital business. We will lead a growth effort of the market through our use of customer focus, competitive advantage, and I can barely say the words, it's so bad. But I would send them around to people. Last time I got about 400 different responses, basically 3 types. This is the exact wording from our business plan. I've seen 2 of these used already, and my favorite is, are you for hire? So a friend of mine's put this all online, by the way. This is strategy as a service. That's the URL at the bottom. So if you ever need a strategy, you just type in the URL. It auto-generates you one based upon nothing whatsoever. So this is a couple of days ago. Our strategy is collaborative. We will lead an open effort of the market throughout. It's just, if you don't like it, just press refresh until you find one you do. Saves a lot of money. So there I was in 2004, the CEO of this company, realizing that my strategy was, was just copied from others. So I went back to first principles. I went back to Sun Tzu. Do you know what he wrote? Wonderful. So Sun Tzu talked about 5 factors that mattered in competition. Understand your purpose, your moral imperative, then understand the landscape you're competing in, then understand the climactic patterns, so in business terms, those are economic patterns that are changing the landscape. Then you get into doctrine, so universal principles, how to organize, and then you get into the leadership, which is all about gameplay. Then I came across John Boyd. Anybody know what John Boyd wrote? OODA loops. So a US Air Force pilot, he talked about the game. The first thing you have to do is observe the environment. That's what landscape and climate is all about. And then you orientate around it with doctrine. And then you get to decide where you're going to attack. That's the leadership bit. And then you sort of act. And I was quite excited by this. And I would show other people, and they would go, yeah, strategy is really all about the importance of why. And I would go, well, hang on. There's two whys. There's the why of purpose, as in I want to be the best tea shop in the UK, or whatever it happens to be. And there's the why of movement. And those are very different things. So if you think about a game of chess, the why of purpose is to win the game. The why of movement is, should I move this piece or that piece? And it's through movement that we actually learn. So back to Fatango. We sort of had a purpose, sort of had a game. We wanted to be best online photo service, though we weren't doing very well at that. Then we come to observing the landscape. How do we do that? And this brings us to our second topic, which is situational awareness. And the best way I can explain this is with three stories: Vikings, chess, and Themistocles. So Vikings, very frightening. This is how they used to navigate. From Herman, head due west towards Half, and you will have sailed north of Hatland, so that they used to use stories. We do it ourselves. If somebody doesn't have a map, we give them a story. If they want to get somewhere, it's up the road, turn left, turn right, they drive off. We're left with that moment, do we send them in the right direction? Maybe we're evil. But anyway, that is just that. Maps are much, much easier. So quick question, what would you use to navigate? A visual map or a verbal story? Map, yes. What do we use in business? Stories, fabulous, right. So the next one is Chess World. I want you to imagine you live in a world where everybody plays chess, and how well you play the game determines your ranking in the world. But the thing is, you've never seen a chessboard. All you've ever seen are these characters on a screen. And you play the game very simply. You press a button, pawn. Your opponent sees and counters, pawn. You counter, pawn. They counter, and the game goes on for ages until somebody wins, or more likely it's a draw. Now what will happen is, after many, many games, we'll take these sequences and stick them into our big data systems and come up with secrets of success. So if you press queen, I should respond with knight, rook, pawn, or something along those lines. We do this in business all the time. HBR, how earlobes can signify leadership potential. Seems like a secret of success to me. Anyway, what will happen is one day you'll play a game of chess against someone who can see something magical, the board. You don't know this. You'll move, they'll counter, you'll move, they'll counter, and you'll have lost. And you'll be there going, what the fiddlesticks happened there? The first thing you're going to do is write down this sequence like it's a new magic secret of success, and you'll still lose. Then you'll start thinking, maybe it's the speed at which they press the button. You'll start recording that. You'll still lose. Then you'll go, maybe it's cultural. Maybe they're a happy sort of person. You'll still lose. You lose because you exist in what's known as a low-level situational awareness environment. So, what would you use to learn? Secrets of success or context-specific play? What do you think? I can't hear you. Context-specific play? Yes? Yes, excellent. Right, what do we use in business? Excellent, super. Right, so the last one is Themistocles. ancient politician, Greek general, had a problem. The Persians were invading. What he decided to do was to block off the Straits of Artemisium, force the Persians along the coastal road into Thermopylae. It's a narrow pass where a smaller number of troops could defend against a larger force. There were about 170,000 Persians, about 4,000 Greeks, including 300 Spartans. Fabulous. Right. I want you to imagine you're part of the Athenian army, part of the Greek states. You're standing there. It's the eve of battle. Themistocles is giving you purpose. We're going to defend against the Persians, this mighty horde. And then he says to you, I do not understand the landscape. I do not understand the environment. I have no map, but have no fear, for I have created a SWOT diagram. Strengths, a well-trained Spartan army, a high level of motivation not to become a Persian slave. Weaknesses, the ephors might stop the Spartans standing up. A truckload of Persians are turning up. Opportunities, get rid of the Persians, get rid of the Spartans. We're actually Athenian, we hate the Spartans. Threats, the Persians get rid of us. And the Oracle says a really dodgy film might be produced a few thousand years later. Okay. So what would you use to communicate and determine strategy in battle? Position and movement described by a map or a magic framework like a SWOT? Position and movement. Excellent. Now, what do we use in business? Magic frameworks. Fabulous. Okay, so going back to chess and alchemy. Navigation, learning, and strategy. Chess, it's all visual. Learning is context-specific. Strategy is all about position and movement. It's what we call a high-level situational awareness environment. It's a bit like military. If you ask a general, why did you bomb that hill? They won't say, because 67% of other generals are bombing hills. They won't say, because I thought bombing a hill would be a good story. They won't say, because I read this article in General Weekly that bombing hills was the in thing, or that Uber would do it. No, it's all about position and movement. Now, alchemy is all about storytelling, secrets of success, and magic frameworks. It's a low-level situational awareness environment, and that's where I was, being this fake CEO. So the difference between the environments, very simply, is the existence or non-existence of a map. And maps have very specific characteristics. They are visual. They are context-specific, the battle at hand. You have the position of pieces relative to some form of anchor. In this case, it's a compass. So this is north, south, east, or west of this. And you have consistency of movement. So you know to go from Thebes to Thermopylae, which route you have to go. And you have components. Those are the basic characteristics of a map. Now, I had lots of things which were called maps. So I had things like systems maps. Anyone seen one of these before? Something like it? Yeah? So I took something like CRM and went, what happens if I take CRM and move it over here? Does the map change? And the answer is no. But I'm pretty sure if I take France and shift it next to Australia, the map has changed. The problem is these aren't actually maps. They lack position, anchor, and movement. But it's okay, I had business process maps. They're maps. Turns out they're not maps either. Oh, it's okay, I have mind maps. They're maps. Turns out they lack characteristics as well. As inconceivable as it is, we keep on using that word, but I do not think it means what we think it means. So, this leads me on to how to map. So I had a cup of tea. Being a Brit, sat down there, having a cup of tea, thinking, how do I map my environment? And I was having a cup of tea, and I went, hang on, as a user, I need a cup of tea. But that tea has needs. It needs hot water, it needs tea. Hot water has needs. It needs water, it needs a kettle. And a kettle has needs, it needs power. So what I could do is I can have an anchor, the user, and I can have position in a chain of needs relative to that user. Oh, that's good. So I took one of my systems maps, focused on the user, customer, and created a chain of needs, a value chain. So this component needs that component, needs that component. And I thought, brilliant. Turns out it's pretty useless. Why? Because I've got no movement. So I looked at power, and I know we start with a Parthian battery, 400 AD or whatever, and eventually we get utility provision by Tesla and Westinghouse. So I started to look into how things evolved. Because evolution, change equals movement. And after about 6 months, this is the pattern that I discovered. So if you look at the ubiquity versus the certainty of something, we start off with the genesis of novel and new acts, custom-built examples, products and rental services, commodity and utility services. And it's driven by demand and supply competition. Same happens with data, with practices, even with knowledge. Now, this isn't a diffusion curve, by the way. As something evolves, it will diffuse through thousands of ever-increasing markets. So I took my map, or I took my value chain, I added the evolution axis at the bottom. I suddenly put position, things in, power, very much a commodity, so put things where they were, and that was the first map that I produced in 2005. Yay. So what? Well, this is the bit where we get into exploiting the landscape. You see, if you understand the landscape, you can start to determine or observe climatic patterns. So these are rules that influence the game. So you don't get a choice about these. These happen to your landscape whether you like it or not. So what are these? So things like everything evolves. If there is supply and demand competition, it doesn't matter whether it's computing, money, or penicillin. It starts over here and eventually ends up over there. The second thing, characteristics change. So you start off in this uncharted space. Again, money, penicillin, computing, doesn't matter. It's chaotic, uncertain, unpredictable. It evolves through another set of characteristics, and over time it evolves and becomes industrialized, ordered, standard, stable, boring, dull. This is the Salomon and Story innovation paradox of 2002. Now, that also was useful for me because in 2002, roughly, we'd gone all agile. And by about 2004, had discovered it wasn't working everywhere. But now, because we knew characteristics would change, we knew that Agile in-house was good on the left, because it was all about focus on reducing the cost of change. Six Sigma outsourcing was good on the right, because it was all about focusing on reducing deviation. And Lean, and use of off-the-shelf products where possible, was good in the middle, because it was all about focus on learning and reducing waste. So by Lean, I mean Lean startups, so things like XP or Scrum plus certain other artifacts, MVP, etc. So we learned that no one size fits all. Same with purchasing. So very much VC-based, they're more outcome, they're much more sort of COTS-based, they're more unit utility. There wasn't a single method. Then we started to learn that as things evolved, like electricity, they enabled higher order systems. They expand the area to explore, the adjacent unexplored. So electricity enabled things like computing, radio, television, which of course all evolved. And then we learned we had inertia to change. We didn't like the fact that things changed because of existing practice. So quick question, who was first with a website? Blockbuster or Netflix? Blockbuster, yes. Right, who was first with video ordering online? Blockbuster, yes. Right, who was first with experimenting with video streaming online? Blockbuster, yes. Who went bankrupt first? Yes. Everybody said, oh, you don't want to be a dinosaur and lack it. They out-innovated everyone. It wasn't lack of innovation that took them out. It was a pre-existing business model. So it was late fees, basically. They used to make money from us always forgetting to return the cassettes. Point is, there's 27 common economic patterns. And you can use these to anticipate certain types of change. So back in 2005, I had my map. We knew that platform compute would go to a utility. We knew we'd have inertia. We knew it would cause higher order systems to appear. That gives us lots of opportunity of where to invest. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so once you get beyond climactic patterns, then you get into doctrine. So what's doctrine? These are the universally applicable approaches regardless of context. So it's a bit like flanking versus firing. So flanking is context-specific. You flank an opponent who's at a particular position, whereas firing is fairly universally useful. So it's a good idea before you flank an opponent that your soldiers have learned how to fire rifles, or before you do, that they've done that beforehand. There's no point in the middle of a battle saying, right, we need to flank someone. You better go away, learn how to fire a rifle, come back when you've finished, then we can flank them. So the universally useful patterns are things like focus on user needs. What a surprise. Another one is if you have multiple maps, like police, borders, immigration, we share them, and we find that common components appear on multiple maps. So we have duplication. And often, we rebuild the same things in slightly different ways. We often find ourselves custom building what's a commodity. So we have bias. So maps are quite useful for taking that out. Now, I always thought government was bad in terms of inefficiency. The worst example of duplication I found in government is 118 workflow systems doing the same thing. Amazing. Except for the private sector is brilliant at duplication and bias, far exceeds anything I've ever seen in government. I've got a global pharma who has 300 teams building enterprise content management systems. It's like, wow, that's amazing. They even have one team building a global enterprise content management system to replace all the others. And in this wonderful meeting, they were sitting there saying, we're building this. 5 other teams who were also building global enterprise content management systems appeared. I have a bank. They have 1,000 risk management systems doing the same thing. They sit there complaining we can't innovate. They're brilliant at innovation. It's just they're always rebuilding the wheel in a slightly different shade of blue. Okay, so once you get beyond removing bias and duplication, you get onto methods. So that we outsource, that we build with off-the-shelf products, that we build in-house agile techniques, lightweight XP. A bit like HS2. So we start off with this, a box and wire, systems map, turn it into a proper map. This is about 2011, 2012. Then apply multiple methods. Pretty straightforward. So we're not one size fits all. In the past, we used to just like have no map and one size fits all, outsource it all, and get hammered with change control costs over here. So a quick test for you all. Anybody know what a world perception server is? No? Okay. I'm going to imagine, anybody in finance here? Few? Right, I'm going to imagine you're all in finance. I'm going to give you a systems map, i.e. one of those things which aren't a map, of a self-driving car. But because you're in finance, I'm going to change all the terms into Elvish. So this is my Elvish self-driving car. Okay? Now, what I'm going to ask you is a question. Should we outsource or build our own? Should we outsource or build our own? What do you think? Because this is what we do. All right, I'm going to give you exactly the same diagram in a map. Exactly the same, but now mapping form. Should we outsource or build our own? Outsource. Should we outsource or build our own? Okay, I convert it back into English. GPS over there, world perception server over here. The point about it is having that context enables us to have discussions about how to treat things. Okay, so back to Fatango. There we were with our map. We were using multiple different methods. This is 2005. We'd started getting rid of bias and duplication. Then we started using small contracts, thinking small. So this comes from FIST, Fast and Expensive, Simple and Tiny, US Air Force, the work of Lieutenant Colonel Dan Ward. When they built the Harvest Hawk, which is a marine combat aircraft, it went from paper to combat operations 18 months, fired its first shot in 19 months. Pretty remarkable for military hardware. And basically, the approach is to break things down. So not try and do it as all sort of one big, all singing and all dancing will cover, but break things down into small components, treat them quickly. And that's what we did. And then, of course, we started to use teams, so cell-based approaches. And you hear more of that today, these days, with things like Amazon, 2 pizza teams, and higher cell-based structure. And then what we discovered is it didn't matter whether it was engineering or finance or operations. Engineering here is not quite the same as engineering over here. So we introduced a structure known as pioneers, settlers, town planners. So pioneers were very good at exploring the unexplored, uncharted space. But what they built, half the time, was flaky. They would build and operate and run it. But settlers would then come and steal from them and turn it into useful stuff that people actually wanted. And then town planners would come along and steal from the settlers and industrialize, build the empires of scale. Now, GCHQ, which is our intelligence service, have very kindly open-sourced a document called Boiling Frogs, which is all about this 3-party system: commodity, specialist product portfolio, research and innovation portfolio, and how you build an organization that copes with constant change. Just search for it online, you'll find it. It's all open sourced. Okay, so I've got my purpose vaguely. I now understand the landscape. I'm learning climatic patterns. There's about 27 of those, so I'm starting to anticipate. I'm learning doctrine. There's about 40 different forms of doctrine. And it's really useful not only for yourself, but to analyze competitors, because it gives you an idea of how capable they are of adapting. Now we get into the leadership bit, finally, the why of movement. So this is the last bit of our journey. This is where we've gone from the wandering past the elves into exploit. We're going into the world of open source as well, and I'm going to try and link this all the way back to strategy, because strategy is all about context-specific forms of gameplay. These aren't the universal patterns. These are the ones which work in particular conditions, things like flanking. So you have your map, you anticipate change, you see where you can invest. The question now is, can you manipulate the market? And that's what gameplay is all about. Open source is very good at accelerating things. You can use fear, uncertainty, and doubt to slow the process down. You know, you don't want to use that cloud stuff. It's dangerous, whatever it happens to be. You can use constraints. There's about 70 different forms of gameplay, ways of manipulating the market. Now, how do we know things like open source is context-specific? Well, this comes from this question. I was looking into, so Jamie Dimon talked about I'd rather have first-rate execution than a second-rate strategy, and that was quite a popular idea. You know, strategy doesn't matter. Execution is the key. So I looked at 160 Silicon Valley companies, measured their level of strategic play based upon awareness against the use of open techniques, in this case, action. Now, the bigger the bubbles, the more companies in that particular area. This is Silicon Valley, so it's not representative of the entire industry. If execution ruled, these companies would be doing better. If strategy ruled, the companies at the top would be doing better. That's what the data showed. Market cap changes over a 7-year period. So they both matter. And Dimon's doctrine is about as flawed as it is popular. However, what was interesting was the group at the top were open by thinking. They wouldn't just open source everything. They were deliberately open sourcing, whether it's APIs or data, to change a market. Whereas the group at the bottom, the ones over here, not doing so well, were open by default. Let's just open everything without thinking about it. So back to Fatango. We had our map. We came up with a context-specific play, 2005. We were going to build the world's first platform as a service, particular ecosystem model called ILC, innovate, leverage, commoditize. Ecosystem is one of these sort of hand-wavy terms. There's a bunch of very discrete and concrete models. We anticipated somebody would do a compute utility play. I thought it was going to be Google. It turned out it was Amazon the next year. Didn't really matter. We would build and exploit them. And we would allow other people to build on top of our services and monitor the metadata to identify new patterns to deploy. So this was the world's first ever, well, serverless environment. So then you act, and that's exactly what we did. We built Zenki, the world's first ever JavaScript front and back end, build entire applications, utility billing, all the way down to the function. It was great. It was exploding. Unfortunately, parent company had some sort of strategy consultants come in with their stories and tell us it wasn't the future, this cloud thing. Remember, this is 2005. The three things that we were doing, 3D printing, the use of mobile phones as cameras, and cloud, were not the future. The future was 3D TV. So we should shut it all down and spend about $1 billion on 3D TV. By the way, does anybody here have a 3D TV? Yeah, that went well. So I went to Canonical, who provide Ubuntu. And what we did was we mapped out the environment. This is 2008, where it was changing, where we should attack. People often use horizons. So this is Horizon 1, the legacy, Horizon 2, Horizon 3, etc. Anyway, we used the map to work out where to attack. We're a tiny company, 300 people. We're up against Red Hat and Microsoft. That's what happened. 2008, that's us. 2010 was 70% of all cloud computing. Then I went to work with government, wrote something called the Better for Less paper with Liam Maxwell, which helped transform the coalition in the UK in 2010. And these days, I do lots of stuff on nation-state competition, which is really interesting with China, but it's beyond the scope of this talk. So quick summary. Strategy is a cycle. It's an iterative process. It's really important to act. You have to take steps. But it's also really important to understand the landscape as you go, which is what Crossing the River by Feeling the Stones, wonderful statement by Deng Xiaoping, is all about. Now, if you want to learn more about mapping, first of all, after being badgered many, many times, I've started writing a book. It's all Creative Commons. Help yourself. I'm on chapter 17. It's about 450 pages so far, but it's all Creative Commons, so that's there. Alternatively, we've started doing map camps. So what happened was I tweeted I would be in London. Anybody want to learn mapping? And within 2 hours, 100 volunteers had got together, got a building, an entire conference had been created, which is wonderful. It's a sort of marvelous things that the open source community do. The company I work for, the Leading Edge Forum, also provides some videos. They cost like $75 for a 2-week course. And so there's the discount there. If you want to, if you don't want to read the book, you want somebody to instruct you, you can do it that way as well. That's at learn.leadingedge forum. Anyway, so that's it. I suppose I should say thank you. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, we can go into the danger zone, and I can show you some more about mapping itself. Thank you.